Good morning, everybody. So
morning.
it's a very special occasion. It's always a joy to come here, to come back here, and to talk about such an important topic. In fact, this topic is part of our permanent campaign of the Spiritist education activities in the state of Florida, and that's interesting because I think that we all should see or perceive Spiritist education not only regarding the children and youth, but including ourselves as immortal spirits in this process of learning, in this process of education. And our main Spiritist education classroom is our planet, which hosts us and provides us with so many blessings. So the title is Family, Not a Random Circumstance. I should have reworded it in a question mode, but I have already given the answer. So in order for us to develop this subject, we will first talk about the objective, the role of the family, and since it's not a random circumstance, it means that it needs some planning in order for the role of the family to be fulfilled. So first we will talk about what family is for, and then we will talk about this planning process. And in order for us to think about this topic, we based on the Spiritist book, the Spirit's book, the Gospel according to Spiritism, and this book. Let me take them all. Which is a real treasure from the mediumship of Raul Teixeira, Challenges of Family Life, channeled by him and by Camilo. The structure of this book, in every session, it begins with a message, and then there is a set of questions and answers about our everyday concerns regarding family aspects. Okay, so let's begin. We can find the subject family in the Spirit's book in the third part of it, which are the moral laws, and within the moral laws we find Kardec addressing the family in the law of society. So in the first item of the law of society is called the need for societal life. Now, the need that we all have to live in society. But instead of bringing Kardec's questions and the answers from the spirits, we decided to do something a little bit different. We decided to borrow an extract of Martin Luther King's speech that addresses this topic in a very interesting way. So it begins like that. Did you ever stop to think that you can't leave for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? You get up in the morning and go to the bathroom and reach over for the sponge, and that's handed to you by a Pacific Islander. You reach for a bar of soap, and that's given to you at the hands of a Frenchman. And then you go into the kitchen to drink your coffee for the morning, and that's poured into your cup by a South American. And maybe you want tea, that's poured into your cup by a Chinese. Or maybe you're desirous of having cocoa for breakfast, and that's poured into your cup by a West African. And then you reach over for your toast, and that's given to you at the hands of an English-speaking farmer, not to mention the baker. And before you finish eating breakfast in the morning, you've depended on more than half the world. That is the way our universe is structured. That is its interrelated quality. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality. And this sermon is entitled A Christian Sermon on Peace, and it was delivered in 1967. And it's very interesting because most of the times we think that we are autonomous or we are independent, that we don't need anybody's help. And it's interesting the way that Martin Luther King shows us that we are all connected, even if we don't feel it, but the facts show that we are all connected. And because society, the law of society is a law of the nature. That's why. So it's part of our nature to live in society. And one of the aspects brought by the spirits when they answer some of Kardec's questions are that our own body shows us that we are meant to live in society. If we have our mouth, if we have our eyes and our ears, our senses, in order to communicate with the world and also to receive the information, to receive the impressions from outside. So our own bodily constitution tells us that we are meant to live in society. So and it's interesting that once when we were dealing with the subject with the youth, we did an activity more or less like that. So we were working on some questions of the Spiritist book, and they were written on a card like a domino. Half of the card was one question, and the other half was an answer from another question. So that the group had to figure out which answer matches which questions. Trying to symbolize that our questions may not be the other's questions, and we may have answers for somebody else's questions. And that's the purpose of living in society, because we are all different. We have different needs, but in our different needs, we can help each other. We can help one another. So, and our body is a proof of that. Okay, moving on. But we also see that this idea of family, that this experience of family does not start in the human kingdom, among humans. Within the animal kingdom, we start to see these experiences in embryo, but they are the beginning of this experience of a familiar, of a family life. But Kardec and the spirits point out these little box here on the bottom, which says material life and moral life. Although we can see that there is this I wouldn't say feeling, but it's the instinct, which is the seeds of the feeling, of the feelings. So this is there is this instinct of preservation, of conservation of the offspring that we see in so many species, and that's what the spirits call material life, meaning that this family structure is based on the need, or it's based on the instinct of preservation. Once the offspring is grown up and they don't need their parents, these ties are not there anymore. But it is the beginning, and every characteristic, every feature that we as immortal spirits have, they exist, or they become our asset by this developing process, by this learning process. And this learning process is got step by step. So these are the first steps in order for us to develop these family feelings, these familiar feelings. Whereas while the animals only have the material life based on the instinct of preservation, we have what the spirits call the moral life. Because our families will take care of their offspring, not only moved by this feeling of the instinct of preservation, but there will be also affection ties, and the needs, the parents will try to fulfill the needs of their kids, and so on and so forth. So this new element comes into play among us, the affection ties, and the need and the general need for the progress. And then the spirits say, for humans, there is something beyond physical needs. Physical needs meaning the material life that we talked about. There is the need to progress. Social ties are necessary for progress, and family ties render the former, the social ties, even stronger. Hence, family ties are a law of nature. God has thus willed that humans learn to love one another as brothers and sisters. So that's the main purpose of the family. And this is Kardec ends this section of the laws of society with this question, which is very interesting, and then we will see what Camilo has to say about the Spirit's answer. What would be the result for society if family ties were relaxed? A magnification of selfishness. So, with all these moral aspects involved in the family, the main objective of the family, of the familiar structure, is to, Carla talked about conversion. So it's to convert this selfishness into the need to look at the other. So this is about transformation. And that's why I thought, and not only the opening reading that you made, but the explanation that you gave were very handy, because the family is this first laboratory in which we can try our true conversion in order to transform this selfishness into a feeling that doesn't look only on oneself, but at the others. And we see that in the beginning, we know, and the pedagogy and psychology tells us that the baby is by nature egocentric. The baby only looks at himself. But the family provides the environment that will make this baby realize that there is somebody else than only themselves. So there are their parents, there are their brothers, their cousins, and the group grows bigger and bigger. So this structure is meant to make us realize that there are some other people that are different from us, and that we also should take care of them. So, and that's why the answer of the spirits, although it is very short, it is very meaningful. And Camilo, in one of the messages channeled by Raul Teixeira, talked about this very aspect, which we took some bullet points to talk about, to discuss. So he begins by saying that outside the family environment, it is easier for the individual to be carried away by his or her egomania, since the individual doesn't have to think of anyone else. He will tend to think only at his or her own needs. So the family is this structure that provides the elements for this individual to realize that there is something else other than him or herself. When there is no need to think about others, one will tend to care only about oneself, and that's a logical consequence. And we see, it's interesting that when Kardec talks about pride and selfishness in an essay from the posthumous work, he has an essay about it, and he tells that he starts his discussion saying that the pride and selfishness come from the instinct of preservation, just like we were saying in a few slides before, but in an exaggerated way. So when we exaggerate this instinct of preservation, then we start this whole process of pride and selfishness. Okay, the strength of consanguineous ties is capable of promoting solidarity, encouraging goodwill, setting up the enlightened basis of love. Because these and they are strong ties, and just like we said before. So this is the lab. This is a real lab, and in the lab, for those who have been in one, we make experiments. Some of them are successful, but some of them are not. So and that's why we have these. Sometimes we have these good moments, we have this harmony, but we have our difficulties too. And that's the perfect environment to have these difficulties, because it's a controlled environment. Because of these consanguineous ties, sometimes we are able to look over some difficulties in benefit of the whole. And this is our first attempt to think about the others in a small group, because our ultimate goal is to make this family grow. So from the family formed by consanguineous ties towards the universal family. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have taught us his prayer, and his prayer wouldn't have begun by our Father. If it is our Father, that's because we share the same Father. And if we share the same Father, we are brothers. But we are not still there. We are in the process of realizing that. And the best way for us to realize that is to begin with little challenges, and they will become bigger as we become more mature, spiritually speaking. And all learning process is, according to pedagogy, is done little by little. We cannot start from one point and go to the top without going through the intermediate steps. This is not how it works. And it would be very hard for us if these were the law. It would hurt us, because it would impose us something that we are not ready yet. That's why the process goes little by little. Family is where we have our first lessons in our present incarnation of living and getting along with the differences. Yes, and we start to see that the other members of our family, they do not think exactly the way as we think. That they have different tastes, that they have different aptitudes, they have different opinions, and that there is where our experiments, sometimes they go well, but sometimes they go astray. Sometimes they are not very successful, but it is an experiment, and we keep trying until we find a better solution. And it's interesting that at this point, Camilo points out that the nature shows us lots of examples of living, of getting along with the differences. We see so many species of trees, in the vegetal kingdom, living in harmony. Can you imagine, for instance, I like these sunset pictures very, very much because we only get these different patterns of the sun in the sky because of the clouds. If they weren't there, they wouldn't refract the light. And we would only see one pattern of light. So, isn't it the different tones, isn't it more beautiful than only if we saw a monochromatic picture? So the nature gives us everyday examples of living with the differences in a harmonious way. Not only in the nature, even and the animals living together with the nature, with other species, and with species with other kingdoms. So it's interesting to see that we have these examples of living with differences around us every day, but sometimes we don't have the eyes to see that, just like Jesus told us. And Camilo ends this reflection by this sentence, which I find very interesting. All differences are well adapted in nature. Why these differences among humans cause problems, sufferings, and pains? So we should learn a little bit more from nature in order for us to know how to live with the differences and to learn from them. Because the differences, they are not there in order to make us feel dissatisfied, but they are there in order to show us that there may be other points of view which we have not envisioned yet. And they might be better than ours. So these differences are like a wake-up call that there are other perspectives, and we can learn and we can adopt them if we think that they are better than ours. Why not? So, and this is all part of this conversion, of this changing, of this transformation process that you talked about, Carla. Okay, so this is interesting. So these are the main roles and the main objectives of the family. That's the first part. In order for us to talk about this random or not random circumstance, so we have to have clear what the objective of the family is, and we talked about it. So now we will talk about the planning. And then Camilo again, we ask Camilo's help, and there is this question on the book: how is the family structured in the spiritual world? And we begin by this first question: are we predestined to find a specific person on earth in order to build a family? Who thinks so? Can raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. It was interesting that I asked the same question in Cefa, and I saw the husband was sitting in the first rows, and the wife in the last ones, né? And when I saw the husband raising his hand, I immediately looked at the wife to see if she thought the same, and luckily they thought the same way. Yes, but it's.
Did he raise his hand?
No.
He did, I saw.
Yes, it was interesting, but Camilo explains us that this is not the case. This is not, and we will talk about it, but don't get desperate. It's not, on the contrary, it's not a reason for getting desperate. Remember that find a specific person. Because there are people who are trying to find this specific person for the 9th, the 10th time. So, okay? Okay. When preparing for the next incarnation, the spirit has a meeting with its mentors. If it is mature enough to take active part in this process. So let's try to imagine a business meeting. So the members of one party come and the other members come, and they will discuss a given issue based on the facts, based on the situation. So it is taken seriously, and the mentors, they take active part in this process, and we can be part of this process if we are mature enough, if we already are able to evaluate what the good things or the good deeds or the accomplishments that we made, if we are able to evaluate the mistakes that we have made and the things that the aspects that we need to improve. So in order for us to have this awareness of what should be done, we have to be mature for that. Otherwise, the process will happen, the planning process will happen, but not with us taking part of it. Because otherwise it wouldn't be responsible. And it is a lot of effort taken in this process, as we will see. A number of incarnations is evaluated. It's very interesting, this. A number. We are not able yet to be aware of all the incarnations. If we know that we only progress, if we know that the law of the progress is a law of the nature, when we look backwards, does it mean that we were better or worse than now? Worse. Or we had more difficulties in the past. So we are looking at situations, at unhappier situations. And sometimes we are, and it's also a matter of maturity and of emotional stability. Sometimes there are news that happen in our daily lives that destabilize us, that we are not able to handle. So can we imagine ourselves to be aware of, I don't know, 20 incarnations ago, during the Middle Ages or before that? How many atrocities were we able to make at that time? So most of us are not able yet to handle that. And that is respected, because this process the purpose is to progress, just like the spirits explained. So it wouldn't make any sense for us to be traumatized during this meeting and expecting that we will evolve after this meeting and after this incarnation. So this number of incarnations, this limited number, is also proof of God's mercy. Okay, And then in this meeting, positive accomplishments, virtues acquired, because we have done some good. That's not talking about bad deeds. We have done some good. We have evolved. We clearly have evolved. That's for sure. That's for sure. Don't look at me skeptically. That's true. Okay. As well as our mistakes and sufferings we have caused to ourselves and others are assessed. So we have access to the whole situation. The spirit is led to deep considerations about its own needs for the following incarnation: life situation, tests and atonements or trials, and the kinds of people, kinds of people, not a specific person, kinds of people each should meet in order to take best benefit from the granted opportunities. And let us digress a little bit more on this topic. When this meeting happens, we have a clear picture of the feelings that we must develop, of the feelings that we must convert, transform. And for those experiences to take place, we need certain kinds of people to be around us. If we have difficulties in making commitments, we may have more rigid parents, or a more strict husband, or a more stricter husband or wife. So these are the kinds of people that will help us develop the feelings or the features that we need in order to evolve as immortal spirits. So that's why it would be unfair, this quest, for this crazy quest for the half orange that we all learn. And it is, believe it or not, many people within the Spiritist movement think like that. But we have the explanation and the guidance of the spirits, saying that we are all more or less in the same level. And we need, because we are, at the same time that we are all on the same level, we have specific needs. And so that this domino situation can work. So what, in some aspects in which I am able to contribute, I will contribute to those who need this part. Not only in the family, but in all social groups that we are part of, but we are talking specifically about the family. So that's why Camilo says that in these meetings, we are able to realize, or we are able to realize the kinds of people we should meet in order for us to continue with this evolution process. The incarnating spirit will find in the family what it needs to rebuild the past unsuccessful experiences and develop new virtues, a learning environment, just like we said. Even when, because we know that this meeting is not, these commitments, they are not set to stone. They are a planning, just like we have a planning for our Spiritist education classes. We have this planning, but when we get there, it could happen completely differently from what we have initially planning, and that's okay. And that's okay. And in our case, it's okay, and in God's case, it's even more okay. Because even when our lack of vigilance drifts us apart from the kinds of people we need to connect with, God transforms our careless attitudes into valuable lessons for us, immortal spirits. So even when we go astray, the situations that we got involved with, they will also serve us as a learning experience. Okay? We can change our reincarnatory planning for the better or for the worse when exercising our free will. There is a book by channeled by Chico Xavier, dictated by André Luiz. I gave this example last time, but I forgot to check the source, but it is from André Luiz, which talks about an incarnation of a guy that lived in Brazil in the slavery time, and he was the one who would punish the slaves who tried to escape from the farms. And his punishment was to grind the slaves' arms in the machine that was used to grind the sugar cane. Yes, it's not a big beautiful picture. That's why we only have access to a limited number of incarnations, just like we said. And for his reincarnatory planning, it was predicted that he would also lose his whole arm due to that. This story is longer, but I'm only highlighting the main facts. But in the next incarnation, he did so many good things. He really took full advantage of the new opportunity. So he regretted what he had done, and he really decided to take full benefit of the new opportunity. That when it came to the time in which it was planned for him to lose the arm, he lost one finger. So this sentence is very meaningful because we can change our planning for the better or for the worse according to our free will. No, we don't have time. Yes, there is a video. It's 6 minutes. Okay. Let me try that. I should have tried that before.
Put the sound in.
Okay. Obrigado, Marcelo. Since we talked about living with differences, this video is about living with differences, and you guys will see. Sometimes the kids, they are better at living with the differences with us, and why not learning with them? Since we are all immortal spirits.
Hey guys, it's here. Today we're really I talked to you really something important.
Can everyone hear?
Can everybody hear?
I went to orphan in Bulgaria.
That's fine, because the sound is not.
My brother was born.
Thank you, Marcel.
When he was born from his first mom's tummy, the doctor said he had Down syndrome. The mom said she could keep him. My mom tried to explain it to me, but I don't still understand. Well, whatever, I'm just happy he's my brother. This is my brother. Oh, you say hi? When Archie was little, he had to miss a lot of things because he had Down syndrome. You see, I've been jumping on beds for years. But this is Archie jumping on bed for his very first time. Lots of people think Archie's so different because he says like any other kid. Stay at home playing and going to our sleep, eat ice cream, and stuff. Audrey sometimes bugs me because he really not talking about what I'm saying. Blah, 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 blah. People should treat everyone the same because they're even different. I won't change anything about her because he has done to. I'll take that away. He's perfect the way God made him. Archie, I love you so much because you're the best brother in the whole world. It's a hug, Archie.
So may we think about this important role of the family and value it. That's not part of it, huh? That's not part of it at all. Thank you, guys.
Fernando, let's